just ridiculous. Let's try to get all this in one goddamn take. Just unbelievable. Hello YouTube, this is TheBLOB, and I'm back to talk to the Warhammer people who were Games Workshop people, the people we did Where Night Goblins Dare for, and the people we were doing Charlie's Fallen Eagles for, all that jazz. I wasn't going to talk about Age of Sigmar because I didn't care about Age of Sigmar. I could care less. I was totally and utterly neutral on the subject. But at the same time fascinated to watch it unfold. Long story short, I walked away from the fantasy community a long time ago because I was young and I couldn't afford to chase the dragon, and I sort of boxed it all up. And it wasn't until about a year ago that I came back to it. A friend and I share an army, the goblins that are in the Where Night Goblins Dare videos. And I started playing with some people again that I hadn't played games with for a while. And right around April, I think, of last year, no, more like June, July of last year, I bought a second army. I bought a bunch of Mantic figures because I wasn't going to take any shit from GW. Again, I'm not chasing the dragon. I wasn't going to come back to chase the dragon, okay? But I talked to the people I knew, and I bought a bunch of Mantic figures and Ral Partha and all this stuff. Put together what I thought was going to be a very nice vampire army to play Warhammer 8th edition and into the future Warhammer 9th edition. Myself not being able to afford the 8th edition rule books or any of that stuff, I was able to get help from the gaming community here and abroad, so to speak. But anyway, I got back into Warhammer. And after a few games of getting back into Warhammer 8th and 8.5 is what you really entrenched Warhammer people call it. I just started making battle reports. I said, why not, And let me tell you, this is one of the things I really need to cover in this is that I started trying to understand how to play 8th edition because I hadn't played 8 or 8.5 or 7. I think I stopped at 6, man. So I started looking on YouTube because YouTube can teach people stuff, And I saw people like Lord Tremendous and Once Bitten and the Sustainable Center and Skaven AZ, and this is before Malorian quit. This is real close to when Malorian quit, but I didn't know much about any of this stuff. Again, I was brand new to all of this, but I wasn't deep into the meta of the game because as a gamer of tabletop games myself, I'm not huge into the meta. I want to play a game. I don't want to consistently buy source books and shit like that, codexes. I'll never play 40K with my own money. I've dabbled in Killzone at some friends' houses and stuff like that. And you'll see Epic on our channel because the Epic Warhammer 40K Armageddon whatever Games Workshop game from the past. Again, this is stuff I had when I was a child, and I put it all away, and I dug it all out of a closet later, and the game had long been dead after that. I sort of seem to find myself right at the cusp of the death of Games Workshop games, and I'm fascinated by how it affects the people, but also the market. Well, anyway, I'm drifting. We'll get to all that. So anyway, the battle reports. Lord Tremendous and Skaven AZ Sustainable Center. I started making these battle reports for the Night Goblins because I was getting my ass kicked all the time. And a couple of them said they were doing the battle reports so that they could see how they were playing. So I said, yeah, I can do that too. And I was working with video editing software just to teach myself how to do that for a company I work with. And Then Age of Sigmar started approaching, and the rumors started approaching, and I was watching this community of Warhammer elites is the best way I could describe them. Along with the gaming community I was into now, I was watching them all with trepidation in their hearts, I guess. Um, just insanity. People were like, "Well, I'll never rebase a thing." There were people in my group who wouldn't paint a thing until Age of Sigmar came out, and it's because they had fallen in love with the meta. Maybe the game is alive. I heard him start referring to it as a dead game. Fantasy's going to be a dead game. Dead game to me meant it was out of print, I guess, but what they were really trying to tell me was there'd be no refreshing codexes, there'd be no ninth edition refreshing versions of the rulebooks or any of that stuff. The stuff that I refer to as chasing the dragon. Um, so I just kept telling the guys in my gaming group, I will play 8th edition whenever you want. I have two armies. One I haven't even finished assembling and painting yet, for fuck's sakes, you know. But I will play 8 and 8.5 whenever. I don't need the meta. All I need is the rule book and the army books, and for someone to want to play it. You know, and we don't have to play it every weekend. I don't play any game every weekend. You know, I have a tendency to ping pong all around, from Robotech to various World War II games and um, Wild West and fantasy and World War One airplanes. You know, so I've never been that person. I tried dabbling in fantasy tournaments. I played in 2 tournaments. I was terrible in them both, but I was watching YouTube guys. So basically, the language got worse as Age of Sigmar came out. And finally, when it did come out, my gaming group was using words like funerals and the hate and the rage. The hate and the rage began to descend on Games Workshop for pure betrayal. And this is when I realized that they were pulling the FAQs. They weren't going to sell the rule books. I had a store owner um, basically tell our group that they were going to give all this stuff out now so that stores wouldn't be able to sell this stuff anymore. And what I'm talking about is the very awesome rule book that was very expensive. All of a sudden, retailers can't sell it. And the codexes that were 50, 60 bucks, I don't know, retailers can't sell it. So now I'm watching a retailer getting hit by this, and the ripples kept going. They kept going, and still I'm sort of saying to myself, well, I got hit economically. I paid $200 for a bunch of Mantic and Ralpartha, never finished painting it or assembling it, and now no one's going to want to play it with me ever, you know. But I know that's not true. No one's ever going to want to play it with me is simply not true. If I have 2 opposing forces and a set of rules on a shelf, I can play it any time as long as someone wants to play it. Even someone who's never seen it before. They might see the stuff in 5 years and say, what is that? You know. That's what happened with Epic Armageddon. Somebody saw the little tiny orcs and the space marines and the Mega Gargant. And they said, well, this is 40K, but why is it so tiny? And I had to explain to them that it's basically before 40K, I think. And they were like, you're kidding me. So we can have whole armies of it? Oh, that's fantastic. And all of a sudden, people in my gaming group were going on eBay to find out-of-print Epic stuff and assemble it and paint it. And we've got a battle report with Tyranids, which was a very hard army to assemble on eBay. From dead stuff, quote unquote. But when we play Epic, we don't care about... Well, I don't know how to put this, because it might annoy some people. But when we sit down with the rules for Epic, we just play it. And yeah, it's dead. And yeah, Games Workshop will never fix the holes. And yes, Lord Tremendous is right. if we tried to play Epic with another gaming group, they'd play it different. But I guess we don't care about Games Workshop. We just care about us playing it right then and there, um, and introducing it to new people whenever we can. But basically, I kept saying, I'm not going to make an Age of Sigmar rant. I'm not doing it. I don't care. And then I was on eBay because I'm looking at the stock market crash that is Warhammer Fantasy Battle and the miniatures. And I'm looking at these beautiful armies going for crack deals. And I'm thinking, can I just round out my two armies? Or maybe grab a third, very cheap. Grab some rule books, grab the BRB. I've already printed out a bunch of the whatchamacallums FAQs from the library before they disappeared. Thanks for the warning, people who were super entrenched. You know who you are. And as I was going through eBay, I saw Tomb King Vampire Counts lot. And I said to myself, well, this is a sweet deal. And I clicked on it and I looked and I was like, I know these skeletons. And that's when I realized I was looking at Lord Tremendous's army. And this is before Lord Tremendous. Well, let me put it a different way. This isn't before Lord Tremendous put out his video where he burns his rule book and tells the world he's done with GW. I actually just watched that 5 minutes before recording this. I hadn't seen that video. So all of a sudden I was looking at his army, and he hadn't posted anything on his channel for a long time. And suddenly I was personally affected by Age of Sigmar and by the transition of the meta of Warhammer Fantasy from active to inactive, like the Ninja Turtle ooze. you know, um, like I said, it's guys like Lord Tremendous who made me want to do the reporting and the YouTubing and all. And I was kind of thinking, Lord Tremendous, he'll be pissed off about Age of Sigmar because everybody's pissed off about Age of Sigmar. God damn it! And I'll talk about Age of Sigmar in a second, but um, I surely didn't think after Lord Tremendous had done 200 some videos that he would just call it quits. And I hadn't seen the videos, but I saw his Warhammer armies. I took screenshots to do this rant. And I'm going to post the screenshots of his eBay sale. I'm going to blur out any, his username and stuff, I guess. His address. Well, not his address, but you know what it says on eBay? I'm blurring all that out. Because I don't want to offend him or anything. But I need him as an example to show you what I was looking at the time. And I was like, oh my god, he's jumping ship. He hasn't said anything on his channel, but the man himself is jumping ship. So I started preparing to make this video. I started grabbing different graphics to emphasize my point, thinking about what I wanted to say, looking at a few other Age of Sigmar videos. And what I want to say about Age of Sigmar is it feels to me like someone wrote a children's version of Warhammer Fantasy back in 2000. I want to say like 2008. Okay? And it was sitting on the shelf, and nobody knew quite how to bring it out. They wanted a game that would get young people in and gear them towards fantasy, but I don't know. Instead of actually just bringing it out and using it to gear young people towards fantasy, they blew their fucking brains out all over the wall. And they created vitriol and hatred, the likes of which I've never seen, and caused a stock market crash of sell-offs for miniatures that ranges from people alone at their homes dumping their stuff to commissioned painters who got stuck with merch when the clients didn't want it anymore, and they have to sell it just to make some profit because they don't even play Warhammer and never would have, even if it hadn't died. Age of Sigmar, I think it's meant for children, and I think underneath everything, Lord Tremendous almost said it. He almost blatantly said it in his book burning video. But he didn't. And I want to say it out loud. I think it's written for children. And if you play Warhammer Fantasy at any point in the last 5 or 6 years, you hate this because it was written for children and you are not interested in a child's game. I don't know what GW was thinking by killing fantasy. They could have simply just shoehorned this in like any number of other games. Friends of mine were just trying to understand how someone can throw all that away, but then so was the Sustainable Center and his friends, and the elites of YouTube getting together and talking about it. How could they just throw it away? I'm not worried about it anymore. I guess I'm Lord Tremendous called it holding the wall at 8th edition with his video. I'm not going to be holding the wall. I'm going to own a copy of a game that sits on a shelf. It'll have markers, it'll have templates, I'll have dice for it, and I'll have 2 opposing forces. And maybe 5, 10 years down the road, I can acquire a 3rd opposing force and a 4th. I wish Lord Tremendous hadn't burned his BRB, and I wish he had just mailed it to me. Because all the marks he had made and all the tape that he had sticking out of the margins, that stuff would have been real helpful to me as I continued to play the game whenever I could. Notice how I'm not saying as often as I could, but whenever I could, for the rest of my life. I've been playing games that technically don't exist, because there's friends of mine who've written games that haven't even been published. And I pushed them to publish, but those games don't even exist. I'm not living on living meta. I'm not chasing the dragon. I'm not addicted. And I'm not calling the community that's betrayed addicted, because they're not. What they are is staring, and I think someone said 30 years of Warhammer in the face as it was being shot in the back of the head. The meta was definitely an addiction, but the betrayal outweighs any pain the addiction might have as a hangover. That's for sure. So, I guess what's going to happen is we're going to keep doing things with Warhammer 8th and 8.5. I don't know what my gaming group's going to do. Some of them have already sort of hinted that that's the end. Some of them are trying to convert us to Flames of War. But I kind of like playing the game, like I said. And I don't care about Games Workshop, and I'll buy someone else's miniatures. I don't even want to buy Games Workshop miniatures anymore. Mantic makes some great stuff. Reaper has some fantastic stuff. Sorry, I'm a little tired. But I don't know, folks. I want to thank Lord Tremendous for playing Warhammer Fantasy during the time before I got back into it so that I could see all the videos that he made and figure out how to play the game. I want to thank, One Spittin' for the science of it, because he was really the mad scientist of them all. The Sustainable Center for just being angry all the time, a little anger, a little panic. I want to thank a fella named Gaming with the Cooler, who I ran into recently on YouTube and started paying attention to his videos, because he actually got drunk and blew up about Age of Sigmar. And then he did a sober post-drunk video about it too, where he emphasizes the reality that this is not a game, it's just garbage. And he does it painfully and brutally, and admits that he will keep playing every now and then because he wants to play it. And I guess I encourage anyone to do that. Hate Games Workshop. Hate them. Don't buy their shit, especially if you hate them. Buy their shit if you don't hate them that much. Um, but if you want, play the game. Teach it to people. I found teaching Epic was awesome. Not because I was reinforcing Games Workshop's games, but because somebody just saw Epic and they were like, holy crapola, Titans? And this is before Titans had started to show up at Forge World and stuff. I don't know what the hell Forge World's gonna do. I guess they'll be fine. Anyway, this has been the Blob. Thanks for listening.